It is sometime after 5 o'clock on the West Coast on a Wednesday here in the No Proscenium Discord, and that means it's time for the review crew. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, this week. Wait a second. I'm your host this week, Noah Nelson. Yes, that's the proper English grammar. I've been on too many calls today. We have a nice selection of folks tonight joining us. I'm going to go LA and then out of LA and then back to LA. Joining us from I think in the downtown area, I'm not entirely certain, is our arts editor. Hello.
Hi, Laura Hess.
I'm not trying to out where you live, Laura. Down there in the LBC, outing where he lives. Wait, no, I did Los Angeles again. Sorry, Patrick, but I'm already there. Down in the LBC is our associate culture editor.
It's Anthony Robinson,
and I have the exact address here of one Patrick McLean. Say hi, Patrick.
Did I ever give you the social security number too?
I need that. I need that for later. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Make sure I get that. Make sure I get
Hi,
that.
everyone. It's Patrick.
Hello. And I want to say hello to Sid Benjamin and Nick Sherwin. Hello, Nicholas Sherwin. It's been a while. Randomness is what you're going to learn here. That's a deep cut for folks who know Nick's work. Tonight on the crew, we're going to be talking mystery boxes, mysterious domes, and VR mysteries as well. So that's the deal. And we're going to do it, oh my goodness, in that exact order because Anthony, you're kicking us off. What do you bring into the table this week?
From some fabulous folks up in Canada, from a little company called the Unbound. My brain.
The Boundless Library.
Boundless Library. I don't even know why I did that. The Boundless Library. Sorry, I was like, what? From this folk called the Boundless Library. They are ostensibly they were created by one of the creators of the Mysterious Package Company, but they're kind of like an offshoot. And that creator is kind of left and started his own thing, which is this wonderful, amazing. For me, I found this amazing company, Boundless Library. They have a subscription box service, which is called one of the subscription box services they offer. The first one that they came out with last year, if I'm actually getting my years right at this point, because it's all one big year. It's a mystery box called A Feather in Dust, and what it is. The conceit, let me back up a second. The conceit is for the Boundless Library is that there's a library that's built purely in imagination. There's a library in another dimension, another location, another world where it is built on those things that are come out of the imaginations, those things that haven't been written yet, those things that were only imagined in an author or creator's mind. Sort of like Neil Gaiman-esque, like if you ever remember your old Sandman stuff of the Library of Dreams, right? It's like the Library of Dreams. It's all these things that never actually gotten written, alternate endings, that kind of idea, and it's run by librarians. It's librarians. And one of the things that they decided they wanted to do in this universe is that they wanted to share the stories that they have in this Boundless Library with our world. And in this particular case, the story that they wanted to share is a story of ostensibly it's a story of a young girl who finds her way in the world during the Great Depression in the time of the Dust Bowl in the Midwest in the U.S. That's what it is on top. And the idea behind it is that when they push these things out into our universe and they push it out into our world, the story itself changes. It's kind of broken down, and it's no longer just like a book. It's not a bound book. What we get is a combination of the ideas that the author had. What we get is pieces of fiction. We get pieces of her reality and her actual history, the things that inspired the story itself. And the idea behind this box and the boxes you get is you kind of have to track what the author's journey was and seed it out and pull it out from what the fiction is. And it's the way that this is done. I mean, it seems like it's complicated, but it's a really simple idea. It breaks it down, and you get this really neat story. You get two stories that kind of parallel each other, and there's a dance in the artifacts that you get. So it's basically the mailing that we did, and what I'm talking to talk about today is the very first mailing that you get out the box, and it is this box full of artifacts like you get with most of the mystery boxes. All the different ones you can kind of get. It's usually a lot of paperwork. Sometimes you get like an artifact or two. What they have done is giving you artifacts, like actual physical art pieces, like that you can touch. They give you documents that are aged. Some are literally burnt. Some you have to translate. And it's a journey in and of itself. So, I mean, when I first opened up the box, when I first got it, they for our review purposes, they sent us the entire glom. It's a 6-month mailer. Usually, you get one a month, and there's also other assets you can get. You get emails. There's a couple of podcasts that are involved that are monthly, and you kind of get them as you go through. And the librarian on the other side helps you out to find this journey and to kind of piece out this story. And when I opened up this first box, because I got I got 6 packages all at once, and I opened up the first box, and my head exploded, because I'm like, there's no way I can do this like in a week. There's just no way. I mean, this is really something that's designed to be gone through and taking your time and to just enjoy the journey. I mean, there's for this first mailing, there's just a lot. It's a lot. I mean, it took me about an hour just to go through all the stuff and kind of figure out what was what and kind of put it out. And that was before I even started looking at translating, or before I even looked at translating, or before I did little digging for things, or just to kind of even do a hard reading of any of this stuff. And that was even before I got into like the podcasts. There's like podcasts that go with it.
So, like, I'm going to jump in for a second.
Yeah, please.
So so now that you've done, because in your review, you did talk about this, how great the marriage is between these physical artifacts that feel like they are from that period of time, and then all of the current digital assets, whether it's what you're doing online, the pod play, etc. How much time? Well, I have a couple of questions, but let's start with how much time total would you say this first shipment or this first chapter, how long would you say that took?
For me, kind of going through by myself and taking my time, and because I have old man eyes now, which is really my only real complaint with this, and actually with a lot of the boxes right now. It's like, when you do stuff with newsprint and stuff, it's a little harder for older people to read. But going through it, the first time I went through it, I ended up going through the box twice. I went through the box a full 2 times. The first time I went through it was just kind of just get a big blast and kind of feel for it. It took me really seriously going through it and reading it. It took me about 2 hours. That might not be true for everybody. Some people might actually go through it quickly. But for me, it was 2 hours just to go through the box the first time, to really go through it and read it and understand it, and kind of parse things out. And then I went and listened to the podcasts and read the things. The podcasts themselves, it's about an hour. There's like a couple of different podcasts, and they're about an hour and a little bit of more change. So maybe like an hour 15. There's a couple of letters to go through that you get. It is kind of fantastic for me. I found it was fantastic. It was full, and it took a while. I mean, like once I got through the whole thing, it maybe after I went through the second time, maybe about 5 hours, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot to some people, but that was parsed out over several days, over a while. So like, 5 hours, and I get a little bit of nights, and sometimes I did it. So it was just, I really, I had a good time with it. So, I mean, it just took a while.
So Anthony, you said about 5 hours. That was 5 hours for just chapter 1?
That was 5 hours just for chapter 1 for me. Yeah.
And
Going through by myself.
you've been doing you've done some more of this so far. Is that kind of like what it's averaging out each time you crack through, or?
For me, yeah, I mean, like I say, like part of it is because I like to take my time. I go through stuff again, and sometimes, it's just I'm weird that way. Like I want to take my time and admire the art, because there's true artwork to this too. But also that's, there are some things I looked up. I end up like doing some my own research because it brings up it actually manages to bring up other things that I was like, okay, well, what's that about? And they gave you some research, and it's a good starting point. And I ended up wanting to find out where things were, and just get an idea in my head, where things were taking place. So I did, a whole bunch of googling. I broke out with Google.
And to clarify there, then, it sounds like you yourself are doing this by yourself, correct? Which I think also lends to that 5-hour time period,
Yes.
right? Because I've done a lot of these experiences and boxed things from home, and if I'm doing them by myself, typically I find that whatever time they say, it's like, oh, this should only take 90 minutes to 2 hours. They're usually expecting the family to have gathered around the table, or other people. So I guess I'm just mentioning all that and clarifying it, that 5-hour time shouldn't scare off anybody. That if you're
No,
doing this by
it shouldn't.
yourself, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, like that's me by myself, as a seasoned veteran of going through some of this stuff. And there's people who do it faster. I mean, there are people who are used to working
Well,
faster.
and also, like, I mean, it's funny because I was just talking with David Spira, Room Escape Artist, earlier in the day, and I was giving him like a word of advice for when they play Escape from Godot, which they're going to do in front of a live studio audience for us at Next Stage. My advice to him was just to like not race through it. And he says like, oh yeah, no, we don't try and beat the clock on this stuff anymore, on the story ones. We just try and really enjoy it. And I think there's been this grand maturation of the entire escape game genre. It's no longer like, how fast can you beat it? It's no longer about proving how clever you are by how quick you can do something. This isn't solving Rubik's cubes. You've paid your fee to experience this. And in a room, you only have an hour to play around, right? And in with one of these, you have as much time as you want to dive in.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like you can take, I mean, you only get one of these a month. It's a 6-month process for this particular mailing. So, the way I look at it, it's supposed to fill the month. I mean, it's the whole point of the part of the neat thing about this story. If you're sharing this with other people, and I did, talk with my wife about it a little bit. If you're sharing it with other people, it takes longer. I mean, that's the funny thing, is like it's actually, I think this is the kind of story that will take longer if you're discussing it with other people, because you don't want to. I mean, that was part of the hard thing, was for me writing that reviews. Like, I want to talk about it. You can't talk about it. I want to talk about it just yet. It's like kind of spoiling an ARG. But there's, like, any good show or any good piece of artwork, you want to discuss it. And if you're in the middle of it and you can talk about it, you want to talk about it right then and there. Like Noah, we've done LARPs together where we end up talking like pseudo in character, out of character at the same time, right? Where we've done a thing. And because, something was really cool that we needed to talk about. I think it's the same way for this, is that if you're doing this around the table with your family and you're kind of going to go into it, like if I'd done this with my kids, and I think this would have been, one of my kids is preteen, and the other one is, one of my kids is a preteen, and the other one is, a younger kiddo. I think this would have been fully appropriate to chat with them about, so if we were doing it, they're going to have questions about, like, what is this? What was going on in the Ukraine? Because the story kind of starts in the Ukraine, like in early Soviet Russia, the early USSR. This is one of those things that's like, okay, what was going on in Ukraine at that time? What was happening? What was the Bolshevik Revolution? What was going on in the U.S.? I mean, like that's where the story, without giving too much away, that's where the story takes you. It starts, the story itself kind of, plops down, and
that's kind of refreshing in that way, because I feel like so many of even like in room escape rooms things and stuff like that, they very much are like, oh, we're set in this time period, but very rarely do you need to know anything or be aware of what happens. Like we're just using this as a backdrop, but to really embrace that's a really kind of refreshing idea and very exciting to hear about that.
Yeah, and that's I think that's the really cool thing about it is that it very much um it very much wants you to be part of it. It wants you to, you know, it wants to put you in a place where your magic circle is not you know, like when you go to do this one, like the magic circle is not about you being in you know, in the time and place. You're in the real world, but it very much does pull you into a it's kind of nebulous.
I have a question about that. So that's another thing that Anthony, did you do Arcana? Gosh, this was now a year and a half ago.
No, I did not.
Okay, so but Arcana, what was interesting as you're talking about these, you know, these beautiful artifacts that where you have these tangible items, and they're again set as though they're in that period, and but then you're going to listen to these podcasts and you're using the internet to do this additional research. One of the things that I thought was so great about Arcana is how much it utilized these different historical, I mean, real world historical events and people, but it was set in present day. So as then you're turning to your laptop to do your additional research and to dive, and you could dive even further than they had set it up so well, but then you could even go further and further. And so there was no breaking of the,
It doesn't pull you out the world.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It didn't pull. So, but this sounds like it's almost the reverse because you're launching in this Dust Bowl era, and then so you didn't feel like there's a disconnect there, that it wasn't problematic for you at all.
Well, no, I mean, like what it is that, and like I say, think of it this way: somebody hands you a book, right? And the book jumps around. You don't jump around, but the book jumps around. This is that same kind of idea. It's like
Okay.
you are you being given a book, but it is a postmodern book, if you would. You know, like
Right. Okay.
it's been dismantled. So, like I say, when you open up this box, there's stuff that's from all over. There's stuff from, you know, there's stuff that's in Cyrillic. There's stuff that's in English. There's stuff, you know, that's written in the margins. There's things all over, and the story itself. When you pull it out the box, it's, you know, it's kind of in an order, and I'm assuming that they put it in here in the specific order to look at it. But you know how things go when you get these boxes. You pull things out, you move them around. I try to keep them in this order as much as I can. But as you go through this particular box, there are some things that are out of, you know, timeline order that you don't find until you really dig into it. But when you're going through what the story is, you know, and as you get the digital pieces, it puts it in an order and it gives it context so that you go, okay, well, we started here and it goes to another place and it goes to another place.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, for me, it's just refreshing to be able to go, okay, I will follow you in that world, but I'm not in that world. So when I turn to my computer to do my own research, or, you know, if I want to look up something, you know, because like I literally, one of the things that you're trying to track where she's going, you know, I went to Google Maps a whole bunch. I was like, oh, Google Maps, see if I can find this place. And you find things that are close to it or not necessarily. So there's this neat blurring of reality and fiction for you, that doesn't bring you out the world when you have to actually bring in modern stuff.
Great.
And
Okay.
I think that's the core of what you're getting at. It's like it doesn't pull you out because it never breaks. It doesn't break the game, as it were, for you to like pick out your phone and like look something up. And in fact,
All
that's
right.
to your advantage to be able to do.
All right. Well, Feather in Dust, we're going to have you on again, possibly at the conclusion of your cycle, to see if you still feel the same way once you've gone through
all of it, yeah.
You know, all 30 hours of it, the rate you're going. Right. And also a good reminder that ARGs and mystery boxes, one of the few times when the phrase did my own research, it does not elicit fear, anxiety, and death. If only we could get more people to channel their own research into these forums and not some of the others. There's a story about the first ARG and that goes along with that story, but we'll do that on another show. Laura, Turning to you now, I guess staying here in LA.
Mhm.
You went to the arts district this recently,
Mhm.
and entered inside a mystery of your own, if you will. Tell us about it. Tell us about your latest adventures.
Yes, so this is Wisdome, LA. Wisdome, LA is in, as Noah mentioned, downtown Los Angeles in the Arts District, and it is a 24,000 square foot theme park. And the anchor,
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Is that how do they describe themselves as a theme park?
they describe themselves as LA's first and largest immersive art and music dome park.
Dome Park. Okay, Dome Park. The yes, the court recognizes Dome Park. Uh, now let me tell you about resizing these JPEGs. No, but yes, the court. That was some dark humor right there. I'm sorry, that was inappropriate. I'm in a mood about certain things. Yes, the court recognizes Dome Park, though. I'm gonna strike theme park from the
Yeah,
record.
that's fair. That's
Okay.
fair. And so the anchor is there's 5 geodesic domes. These are of varying sizes. And then there are art installations, sometimes within the dome. Um, there are food trucks. So the reason why I'm referencing theme park or utilizing theme park is that this feels like well, there's a lot of things that this feels like, but this feels like, if you will, kind of a mini festival. So there's like,
Mm.
AstroTurf, there's food trucks. There's actually these trucks where you can rent costumes or you can actually purchase costumes, jewelry, crystals, vape pens. There's a VIP section, but the main purpose and attraction and programming is within these 5 geodesic domes. So this feels like they're going for kind of a mini Coachella, mini Burning Man, and the core programming is this projection mapping within the domes.
Yeah, almost like they've set up like a Burning Man camp in the arts district that was like a
Yes,
dome Burning Man camp, but then like decided to like, you know, monetize said Burning Man camp.
exactly.
Right. Okay.
So right now, there is a main show called Mystic Universe, and that is what fills most of the domes. That is what most people, I would assume, are buying tickets for. I mean, that is the core programming. There's also an add-on special programming that is this is currently, it's a Beatles tribute, and it's emphasizing the psychedelic era of the Beatles, and they have a cover band called Brit Beat. And so this is kind of a 360 immersive domed concert experience, but that's an add-on. So the core experience that I went to is called Mystic Universe, and there are a couple of artists that have actually been featured at Burning Man, Coachella, and Art Tech House. And I believe the total runtime for all of the domed content is about 90 minutes. And you once you enter, and I will say, for anyone who is concerned about COVID protocols, do not go to this.
Mm.
I mean, that actually is my very candid recommendation. They do have plenty of signage saying vaccination is required to enter, masks are required to enter, masks must be worn at all times, and there is food there. So, and there is an outdoor kind of eating area, but masks are to be worn inside the domes. None of this was enforced. I actually volunteered my vaccination card when checking in. I said, would you like to see that? Because it was not requested. It
Mm.
is so lax that for some people with their comfort level, if they're immunocompromised, etc., um, that is one thing that I do think that people need to know going into this.
Well,
So,
that's mondo disappointing. I mean, I know it's a burden on businesses to add checking vax cards if they are not already a bar that checks IDs, right? They're
mhm.
they're set up for that. But oh gosh, yeah. Like don't Don't need another surge. Just never want to see another surge again. Frustrating. Very
Right.
frustrating.
It's just a little it's a little strange. I did see masks handed out when people checked in, but the person who actually verified my ticket, um, her mask was hanging from one ear. I mean, it's just that kind of stuff where it's like I don't really. I think a lot of it is up. It's just not enforced, is what I can say. The night that I was there. So
How busy was it the night you were there?
yeah, so I went on a Friday night, and it really was. It was a very interesting crowd. Initially, I did not understand that there was a dome where you could rent costuming, and I thought that maybe I missed something around like I was like, what do I not know about? Like, what holiday is today that I'm unaware of? Like, what, is there like a witchy holiday that I'm not aware of? Because there were people walking around in different costumes or, accessories, like some, kind of crystal headdress action, lots of flowing garments. So there were people that were doing that. And I was there, I would say, kind of prime time. I believe the park closes at 10. And I was there from like, 8 to 10. And it, it wasn't, there were people mingling through, but in terms of what I would anticipate capacity is, it wasn't, it was a fraction of that.
Right.
So
What were they? Were they there to see the add-on show, or were they there to see the main stuff? Because like I
I don't,
understand like if there's like a concert, there being people and maybe dressing up for the psychedelic concert, but was that going on that night, or was that another
I
night?
mean, I believe it does go on every night. It was
Okay,
not, I don't know exactly what time that was running,
gotcha.
but I don't think that people were there for that. I think people were
Huh.
mostly because as I moved between the domes, I, you know, um, I didn't do it in a sort of linear progression. I kept kind of moving back and forth and hopscotching. And so I would see some people and I would see them later again in a different dome. So I felt like there was we were crisscrossing paths. And I feel like I saw a lot of the same people uh, over time throughout the night. So it just didn't, it seemed like the folks that were there were mostly there for Mystic Universe.
And
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a really stupid practical question. So we keep saying just dome.
Mhm.
Is everything happening under the same dome, or is there a dome and there's littler domes or like littler defined spaces for all of these different events and things to happen?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's 5 domes total, but there are even within those 5 domes, there are sort of like baby domes. There are kind of sort of a, nesting doll of domage. And so
Yeah, yeah. I heard they like domes, so they put a dome in there.
so I mean, you do have I think what's so interesting about this is that so just to drill down for a moment on Patrick's question. So within a dome, you would go in and there's a large dome that had a show called Fractal Time. And this was actually my favorite. I'm familiar with this artist. I'm a fan of his. His name is Julius Horstius, and he's a Dutch digital artist. And this to me was, and it's actually won awards. And that's his work has been featured at Art Tech House. And so um, another thing to note, I mean, it is so intense at times that for anyone who does have motion sickness issues that they've noticed, like in VR, for example, you are lying on your back, kind of beanbag situation. And it can get very, very intense. And there were a couple times I did need to close my eyes because the movement was either it was so fast
Mm.
or almost sort of like strobe like. There's no actual strobing, but so just to note that. So the domes it is totally immersive. When you're lying on your back, you do feel there's no line in your periphery. You feel completely immersed in this. And it's been a while since I've gone to a domed experience. And I will say that on the tech side, um, It looked absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
It was so crisp. There was so much texture, and I'm specifically citing the Fractal Time show for this. But there was so much texture. There was so much detail. It was so crisp. I thought that the projection mapping, the animation was just incredible, and I mean the saturation of the colors, everything, all of that was really wonderful. And then when you
Laura,
go
for a
in,
second, you said the projection mapping. Were they mapping things out onto surfaces that weren't just the dome
no,
surface? Okay, so just the projection, the animation.
yes,
Okay, good,
yeah,
good.
right,
Because
yes,
because we if we talk about like projecting onto a dome, full dome, half dome experiences, like that's one thing. And I gotta admit, doesn't move my needle all that much. Although I have over the years seen a few pieces where I'm like, wow. And there was like a virtual one for virtual Burning Man this year where I was like, there's some really good pieces in here. Like I was appreciating it. But when you start talking projection mapping and you start talking about putting it on surfaces that are not just flat, I get very excited because it's
right.
it's 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 a, it's a different game entirely.
It totally is. And to be fair, I don't know. So for that particular dome in that show, it was just the dome. I don't think there was projection mapping in other domes, but I'm not completely sure. I didn't see any. I saw, I mean, there's a number of different elements that they're incorporating, but in terms of the projection, yes, it's just, as far as I saw, it's just on the dome.
Mm.
So I will say that that part was fantastic. And then in some of these smaller domes with different artists, and then they have the kind of nested dome. And then in the perimeter, there will be installation art, these different sort of little, like almost like banquettes, sort of, although without any seating. These little, like grottos is probably a better term, and these different little immersive spaces, UV light, very, very color driven. I mean, these are more like Instagrammable moments, which is, I believe, how they're presented. I mean, how they're promoted, and it's just. I just feel like even with Fractal Time, which, like I said, was my favorite piece of the whole presentation, um, it's incredible to me how specifically the domed um, programming, like I do think that the tech has really evolved, and yet whether it's these kind of side works of the installation art or it's the domed experiences, we're just missing so much on the narrative side. And I got really excited even in Fractal Time when I thought there was a specific narrative that was developing. And then I realized at a certain point, and it doesn't negate the whole thing, but I was like, oh, I completely uh, misunderstood that, or I was attaching this narrative. It's not there. I was constructing it. And there was a letdown at that moment because my investment evaporated to a degree. And that one was the one that I was the most invested in. And so
Mm.
with these other experiences, we just really haven't evolved on the narrative side, in my opinion,
Yeah.
from the kind of just psychedelic focusing on the tech. The narrative is not supporting the tech um, in the way that I think it could.
Well, and even stepping aside from the focus on narrative as a catch-all for expressing meaning, right?
Hmm.
Like the times when dome work has moved me, it's been very much the vibe of like a tone poem, right? Like it might be music, it might be a music video, and they can get into these sort of rhythms. But I will also cop to the fact that I've been to see some collections of dome work, and like in like a 30 or 40-minute cycle of shorts, maybe one thing has really taken advantage of the concept of a dome,
Right.
and the rest of it feels like watching a screensaver from 1998. Like it just, I'm like, why are we paying money to watch a screensaver? And there's a lot of bad dome work, and it's sad because once in a while you will see something that is kind of really incredible and creates that sense of presence of being somewhere else, even though you're just watching these projections. And I've seen that work here in Los Angeles. I've seen both of that kind of work here in Los Angeles, oftentimes in like the same building. And I'm so sad to say how much of it is not up to snuff, particularly because, I mean, MGM is in the middle of building a big dome out in Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
right? And there's a lot of motion towards doing large scale with this technology. I think that's what people on the business side look at this and say, "Oh, hey, immersive media is a thing, but how do we do that at scale without having to give everyone a headset, or how do we do that at scale, for the people who don't want to put on a headset?"
Right.
And they go, "Oh, dome, but it's to really create something that, starts to feel like a transportive experience requires thinking so radically different about what it is you're trying to make art wise." And so much of this still feels like it's, oh, well, we could do this at a planetarium. Like, here's a
Right.
planetarium show.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And I don't, again, I don't have a problem with, like, again, fractal time. It's not, it's in the name. I mean, there's a lot of fractal art.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, um, if you're not anchored by, again, some sort of narrative, or how is this expanding your perspective on, just some sort of theme, some sort of
Yeah.
story,
Yeah.
then after a period of time, it just, I think I think that's why your screensaver comparison is so apt. You just, because then why are you continuing to, I mean, it's certainly very cool. The movement's cool. And again, the texture, the detail was beautiful, but it just, and especially when you have, then other things that are creeping into your mind, whether it's, again, the COVID protocol issue, or I will say that the crowd was, at least the night that I was there were people that were, they're kind of chit-chatting in the dome. And that's distracting. And it just kind of felt like no one was very present.
Well, it kind of sounds like it wasn't really curated in the sense of what the audience should be doing. There was no like guideposts or signposting or like not examples of what, there was no onboarding in the sense it's like you walk into the dome and you go there. Cause like at a planetarium, at least, like you understand there's part of that, of course, is there's the understanding of you're going to go and you're going to imagine looking up at the stars and everyone has a seat and things like that. But it's still pretty set up. They do hold your hand and guide you through that experience to have some of those kind of awe-inspiring moments, making the most of the dome. Where here it just sounds like people could wander in, and if they decided to look up, they could, but it sounds like they probably weren't.
Yeah, Laura, was there were there published times of, like, the show is starting here and, like, no entry? Because when I've been to Wisdome, my experience was you could just wander in whenever you wanted to, catch the loop, and just leave when you wanted to, or vice versa.
Right. So it is the latter. It still is that you can
Yeah.
just kind of wander freely. And I do think that it's spectacle. There's no substance really with the way, to Patrick's point, like how this is curated. I actually think that, I think that I would go so far as to say that attendees, they didn't really know why they were there. I think it's sort of a lot of, I think the programming and the participants are all kind of wandering a bit blind together.
Mm.
There's a lack of clarity around what this experience, why you're going to this experience. I mean, there's some incredible language, on the Wisdome website about how this is, it says, for the first time in the history of mankind. And with the assistance of computer graphics and animation, we can see the ideas of ancient sages embodied in the works of modern artists. And I was like, oh boy, that is a large statement. And I don't know that
That's a check with a
anyone,
lot of zeros on it.
yeah, yes. And so
Metaphysically speaking.
I don't know that anyone on their Friday night is really thinking like, my goal for the first time in the history of mankind is to, so I feel like there's a lot of cross paths, or there's, not cross paths. I mean, I feel like there's like a lot of wandering around, like, again, who is this for, and why would people be motivated to come to this other than it's a like mini Coachella. And I think that's the thing. I think that these domed experiences, again, if you're going to create this kind of like mini park and you're taking it out of the festival environment, and which has a captive audience, what, where then is, if the main draw at Coachella is different headlining bands and the fact that you get to see them all in one weekend, and then you do these things in between, but then if there isn't the actual music programming and it's just the domed experiences and it's
All
not a
chill
captive
room, no
audience.
rave. Yeah, all chill room,
Yeah,
no
it's
rave.
rave. I mean, when back in my club days, we on the cards when we used to hand out we used to hand out cards on Hollywood Boulevard. Like we didn't have MySpace. We had little printed cards. It would say DJ DJ X visuals by Wisdome. It would actually say visual. It would tell you who the artist was. So I mean, all I'm hearing from this is like, if I go to this, is like I better somebody better bring some edibles, otherwise
Yeah,
it's gonna
right.
be,
Yeah, I mean, that also might be therein may lie the answer, right? It may just be like, hey, do you want to be somewhere other than your house while you're tripping balls? Come on down, come on down.
It very much
Or
sounds
desperate
like
to trip balls anywhere but your home.
Yeah, pretty much,
Last 2 years.
right? Yeah. There's that, and like, and we, yeah. I mean, I that is almost certainly very much part of like the value proposition, if you will, right? And I just think of all the things that could be done, and granted, some of the things I think of that could be done start to get into the category of difficult to clean. Don't take it that way, Anthony. No, I know your brain's going not like that, but I'm thinking about like, there was like I can't remember if it was a dome, but there was this like sensory thing at the Exploratorium in San Francisco ages ago. It was actually designed by August Coppola, who is Francis Ford Coppola's brother, who's passed away some time ago. But it was like, it might have been called the Experience Dome. I can't remember. Look it up. Look up August Coppola and look up Exploratorium, and you'll get to the thing. But there was this tactile dome. That's what it was called. And so it was that there was just all of these tactile things in it, right? And so it wasn't about projections. It was about touching and feeling, and like a furry wall and all that sort of stuff. And I know we're in COVID time still, and the last thing I really want is like some big giant um, uh, plush Wookiee rug for everyone to be rolling around in, either enhanced or unenhanced by chemical substances while they're watching like fractal geometry play out into odd forms. But I kind of do want there to be a place one day when it's a little bit safer, where there's a big Wookiee shag rug and like giant Worcestershire trees, like fractals going on above us, with some thematicness to it, right? Because I think, Laura, your point about the story thing, right? I think a theme that reveals itself through the visual art, that develops and doesn't just stay, um, on a level, even if that development is cyclical. Just something that feels like it's hitting a rhythm of life.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah.
Totally agree.
All right. Well, that's Wisdome right now. Who's the artist again? That is impressive.
Julius Horstius is his name.
Right.
Dutch artist.
And who knows? Maybe those concerts, the concerts could be really cool, because I know they're set up for that, and maybe that's the killer app of Wisdome is a big psychedelic Beatles tribute. event?
Yeah, I would encourage people I found some video that was featured online. I don't think that's the answer.
Okay. All right. Okay. So there you go. That's the
That should be
wisdom.
put on the poster.
I don't think that's the answer. Or with the full ellipses. I saw some video ellipses online, ellipses. I don't think that's the answer. Period. Laura Hess, no Proscenium.
I go see that show, right?
Yeah.
Let's make t-shirts.
Let's make
Yeah.
t-shirts.
That's great.
Let's make t-shirts. There we go. That's now the episode title. Let's make t-shirts. Okay. I'm going to pivot us out of this. We've been hotboxing this dome for too long. Patrick, take us to a different type of virtual experience.
Yeah, inspired / more, I guess, jealous of your experience last time, Noah, doing the Meta movie. I literally blew dust off my Oculus Quest and flipped through the catalog of games that I bought, nor things that I was
Excuse me, your Meta Quest. Got to get the
Oh
branding
my
right.
God. I'm sorry. Mark,
Oculus.
I'm really sorry, man. I did you bad just then. I apologize.
Your
Don't
engagement
get enough
rates just
credit.
dropped. When you need to post a GoFundMe, no one's going to see it because Mark's mad at you. So. Oh God, I just invented our dystopian future. Sorry, Patrick. Yes, you dusted off your quest.
Yes, and I picked out Sam and Max. This time it's virtual. And I guess before I talk into this, do we think the kids even know who Sam and Max are? Like, I know Noah, you do. I bet Anthony, you have an idea. But Laura, do you know who Sam and Max are?
No.
No, Anthony, I thought the comics element you might know. But so Sam and Max are this anthropomorphic detective private investigator couple. Sam is a dog and Max is a rabbit.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Sam and Max. I was like, Sam and Max? I was like, my brain immediately went to Macintoshes. I'm sorry. Yes.
No,
my brain went to Salmon Max, like a giant lox,
Like
on
a
a
fish
giant
burger?
pool. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. I was like a salmon colored Macintosh. But no, but Sam and Max. Yes. I do. Yes. I know exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
So for Laura.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, no,
and for everyone else who's listening, because not everyone who's listening to is like a Gen X nerd.
Yeah, because so they're this private investigators. They're technically the freelance police. They work out of New York and they solve all sorts of goofy crimes. As I mentioned, this is based off a comic book, which also I've never held a copy of in my life, nor have I seen one in the wild. So, but it was like it was published for a decade, and they go around solving goofy crimes. It's a very dry humor experience. They're very, I don't want to say witty, but they're witty, but they're dry in the sense that everything is, very kind of monotone, but it's very intellectual. It's a very highbrow comedy that they're always doing, very kind of almost vaudevillian without props. Like it's like that kind of a level comedy as they solve their cases and things like that. And they've had a kind of long history of being maybe even pioneers in video game spaces. They've had some actually really well-received games, but and from that potentially, that's why they now find themselves in their virtual reality experience where you are a recent inductee into the freelance police and essentially you're getting training on the fly or back at the obstacle course that they have set up at like a defunct amusement park. And you are running around listening to the commentary of them bicker, both playfully and to a point of both narrative and things like that. As you shoot at monsters, you solve some light puzzles that are pretty prescriptive, but challenging nevertheless, and some physical dexterity that requires you to do some, actually at the end, quite death-defying stunts. In that sense, what I really liked about this is that, if you're a fan of a Vader Immortal or more of those immersive theatrical experience where it's very much you're in a movie, you're in experience, a lot of Sam and Max is a lot of fun, because
Mm.
I had so much fun at the end where the evil monster, slight spoilers, but the evil monster is trying to break through to this reality. And I, at one point, am climbing, using my arms, climbing across the bottom of a crane. My feet are dangling below me. The streets of Chicago's are stories down below. Like, if I fall to my death, and I'm like huffing and puffing and trying to reach the crane release so we can try to stop this baddie. There's a lot of really cool like environments and cinematic set pieces. That's a lot of fun.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool.
Had you played a lot of like the Sam & Max, either the old LucasArts games or any of the stuff that Telltale put out back in the day?
No, I have not. My
Oh
experience with
wow!
them is only through the cartoon, a
Oh, that's right.
very
They had a
short-lived
cartoon.
cartoon. I
Yeah,
think it was on Fox,
yeah,
when Fox was desperate to air any cartoon programming on Saturday mornings.
yeah. They
And
ran out of X-Men and they went to Sam & Max.
yeah,
Um, it's yeah, it's kind of funny because like Sam & Max has this long pedigree in gaming, and it kind of warms my heart, even though like I've never. I, so because I didn't have a PC when I was a kid, I never did all the LucasArts games. I would just read computer games, video games and computer entertainment magazine, which was like the really like wordy, nerdy video game magazine. So that explains everything. Like I wasn't a Game Pro kid or an EGM. I was reading VG and CE and being like, oh, what's the big editorial about the tech thing? When I was like 9, like, oh, I want to know more about the industry, because that's who I've always freaking been. And Sam & Max was one of the franchises that came out of Lucasfilm, or LucasArts. My God, 10 demerits. I have to burn one of my Grogers now. Um, uh, After like Secret of Monkey Island. So I was always admiring all this stuff from afar. And then in college tried to play them and like just did not enjoy any of them in college. I was like, this is too much guesswork. So I guess, are there a lot of puzzles where you just have to like try and guess what the designer was thinking? Because then it would be a truly authentic classic adventure game experience.
no, in that
Thank
sense, that
God.
like there are some kind of stop and pause and think puzzles, but once you take the long enough sense, it does figure it out. There are a few puzzles that I do think are, for lack of a better word, poorly designed, in the sense of like, I don't know, I had to look one up because I'm like, I know it has something to do with words. I'm also a person who cannot do word puzzles, in the sense of like, identifying letters or picking up on things. I get very flustered with that. That's me personally. So I will bring that too. But to your point, I think, and that's why I'm glad you brought up and talked about their kind of gaming pedigree, because I'm a little confused who this game is for, because also in that sense, this game came out in July of this year. And I think what was really special about a lot of those old adventure games that Sam and Max were in was that they were at the forefront. They were indie games. They were outside of the AAA stuff. They were exploring and trying to do more with the video game structure than any other thing had done before. So they're pioneers in that sense. But here it's like there are a lot of these theatrical cinematic experiences on VR now. Like it's in many ways it's growing, I think, more and more. There's more options, right? And then
Right.
a lot of the stuff keeps getting mentioned or floats to the top, and they're coming in kind of on the second cycle with the Quest 2 here. You can play it on a Quest 1, but it does seem at times a little bit too late,
I mean,
Um,
but are there all that many of them? I mean, like, I guess there's Wraith and there's this and there's Vader Immortal, and so the Room had that vibe. Um, I guess it is kind of a healthy genre. That would actually be really great. We should sit down sometime and just kind of like go through the big list of this exact genre, because it is my favorite. you know?
Yeah, like being in the heart and the thick of it, and like, sitting in the back seat of the car as the buildings go by, or in one point the like microverse that you're traversing, and there's all the sorts of shenanigans is really cool. And I did, and I took a risk on this game because it's Sam and Max, because I had seen that cartoon. I had been aware of all of the other things they're doing, but to that point, I know Laura, I believe you have a headset. Like, I'm sure you've maybe seen this game. It's flashed up there, but what are the chances that you would have before this moment just been like, oh, there's a dog and a rabbit with guns, and there's a badge and there's an explosion. I'm going to take a chance on this.
I don't recall. Maybe it did pop up. I don't recall it ever popping up, but right. I have not had that conscious thought of here's a dog and a rabbit with guns and maybe I want to dive in.
In the gunplay, there's like hardly any gunplay in that sense. So it's almost like they're trying to lure you in with the image. But like, to your point, I think a lot of people listening who have a Quest and are like you and I who enjoy these, they're going to get a lot out of this. I do think there are some of the others we've mentioned are a little more finely crafted, a little more engaging, for sure, because there's like because also the humor is very dated in the sense of its styling. This is like, one could almost go at certain points, oh yeah, like I could imagine there's some younger listeners out there who might go like, oh yeah, these are the kind of jokes my dad makes with his uncle, with his brother and stuff, my uncle, um and maybe they'll enjoy that, and that's fantastic to hear, and I'm really excited for that. But I would never say personally, while I was amused constantly, I never laughed out loud, I never chuckled, occasionally smiled, and it was all really well done, but it did have like a feeling of a yesteryear sense of humor to it. And I guess I want to tell people, and that's why I'm kind of diving into that. That said, I will say there's actually a few really cool technical things this game does. Because at one point in your training through the defunct amusement park, they have you do a escape room. Basically, you gotta find 3 keys and solve puzzles to get yourself out. And I had started doing it, but dinner time rolled around, so I had to stop, and I knew, all right, fine, I'll just redo the puzzles. I know where now several of the things are, and do that. And then when I turned the game back on and logged in, things were actually in different places. The word puzzle, it was actually different words. It wasn't the same set of 4 words to use to help solve it. It was four different ones. A toolbox I found was in a different place. A screwdriver that I found in a closet was now hidden in the microwave. So there's this really cool like replayability to it, in the sense that like you could play this game today, and then 10 years from now you could unearth it and you could still engage with some of those difficulties. Additionally, at one point, unfortunately, Sam's audio cut out. I heard all the other dialogue tracks worked perfectly fine, but Sam's wasn't in the current like stage or environment we were in. And I switched on to subtitles, and I've never played a game with subtitles. And it was really cool because they had a little photo of the character's face next to the text as it was, appearing. So it wasn't like you had to like see the name. You saw the face, which I felt like, oh, that's really good for maybe with people who have trouble reading, or it's just one less thing that you can associate the dialogue through a face instead.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the very idea, anytime that a game maker or an app maker, makes a nod towards accessibility, you often find that has benefits that, ripple out for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And this has been like a struggle in the games industry, because the accessibility discussion gets tied up into like the difficulty, discussion, like, are you playing the game like the way you're really supposed to be playing it? Right. This kind of very, macho sense. It's like with the whole, like, well, I have the fastest time in this escape room. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. Like this hyper competitive thing, as opposed to, hey, when we create some accessibility tools, maybe you don't need them, but maybe you find yourself liking them, or maybe you find yourself wanting that. Because I could instantly think about that. That's such a cool way to do it. If someone's got difficulty hearing but could read, but seeing the character face, it also feels very friendly. It's like, oh, you have a sense of who it is who's doing it without it lacking style. And that, I'm sure, it also feels very comic booky at the end of the day, that there's
because the font is definitely just not like sometimes no Newman Roman. It's the font that when you start the game, if you went to their website or right now, it's that Sam and Max type font. So that also helps build in and give that throwback to the comic stuff for sure, and really made it more engaging in that way too. Because I know Noah, you're a gamer, and I know, Anthony, you are. I've had this problem in modern games when, like, it's a really smart design when you're walking around with your character and you walk away from the avatar who's talking. Back in the day, that person, their volume just kept coming at the same level. But if you walk away or they start walking ahead of you, their volume gets lowered. So it's like, I can't hear. I'm missing incidental dialogue. So this is like another kind of great way to like help keep track of who's speaking what, especially if not in Sam and Max, everyone have very distinct voices, but in other genres, it would be, I think, really cool and helpful. It's a really fun game. I think a lot of people who love immersive and enjoy these more cinematic VR experience are going to get a lot out of it. I do say, like, I did feel like the obstacle course stuff was there for a little bit video game padding, in the sense of like, here's another. You basically go through 3 parts of training, and within each part, there's 3 different like courses you have to do, and there's always an obstacle course where you're like you're climbing, you're gliding, you're throwing things, you're doing things like that. So it got a little. By the time I did it the 3rd time, I was like, okay, I've climbed enough in this obstacle course. I get it. You want to make sure I'm really good at climbing in this game. I appreciate that, but I'd rather, frankly, just even just sit in the car and listen to the radio with my fellow detectives than just like huff and puff. I'll play Beat Saber if I want to like bash around and hit things. I'll do the climb or something like that. I don't necessarily need that to be a majority of the gameplay here.
Yeah.
Once again, it's Sam and Max. What's the subtitle in this one? Because that's
this time it's virtual.
This time it's virtual, and it's on the Oculus. How much is it?
It's $29.99, and I know it is also available on Steam as well.
Excellent. So keep an eye out for that, and for those who may be looking for bargains, we are going to be entering into the Black Friday Cyber Monday zone pretty soon. So wouldn't be surprised if some stuff doesn't come down a little bit in price. And if you're looking for these cinematic adventures, and if you play this and you really dig it, let us know. We're always looking for feedback. All right. We are a little over an hour into this, and we've kind of wrapped all through. This week, spoiler alert, none of what you just heard is going to be the pick of the week. The pick of the week has been recorded elsewhere and elsewhen.
What?
Yes, we did it differently this time. You will get to hear that on the podcast on Friday, and then Patrick will take our offerings to the pick of the week gods and put it up on Monday over at everythingimmersive.com, which is how we do things now. Anybody got any last parting thoughts before we shut down ye old pod for the week?
I mean, probably people should vote on our t-shirts. We should actually do that.
Okay, no, I have a different plan. I'll share you what the plan on garb and merch is going to be. You're gonna love it. Okay, on that note, that mostly for us, but maybe some premium level stuff. Seriously, I have a plan. We'll talk right afterwards. Okay, until next time, for Patrick and Laura and Anthony, this is Noah Nelson, and we'll catch you next week in the feed.